Today I'm going to talk about the 4 different types of learning styles. We'll start with the visual, follows auditory, kinesthetic, and olfactory. Now, if we focus on the visual, or before I even go to those learning styles, the brain receives information through different sensory organs. There has to be a stimuli that sensitizes the brain for the brain to absorb information. So with visual, the information has to go through the eyes. You have to see something. Light must fall into the retina. It could be the picture with color, it could be a graph, or it could be an object. You have to see it. Okay? If I am talking to you, you have to look at my lips and see how my lips are moving so that you can verbalize the movement, and then your brain will be able to analyze that. Okay? Now, if you look at the picture here, I've got a simple circuit diagram of a series circuit. Now, in this circuit, you've got 2 batteries connected in series. You've got the connecting wires. You've got the voltmeter across the 2 batteries. You've got the ammeter and the 2 light bulbs connected in series. There you've got a switch. Now, as it is, the switch is open. You can clearly see that there is no movement there. So it means that the current is not flowing. Now, if I close the switch, let us make an observation and see what happens. If I close the switch, you can see these small charges flowing through, moving from the negative terminal of the battery into the positive terminal. So the flow of these charges per unit time, it is the one that generates an electric current. It's the one that enables the current to flow through the circuit. Now, if I show the movement of the conventional current, now the conventional current is the current that flows from the positive terminal of the battery into the negative terminal of the battery. So for a visual learner, if you are referring to the movement of electrons, if you don't show a picture or you don't show the movement of the electrons, they will never understand what you are saying. But if you demonstrate with a simulation, they can see the movement of those electrons and they can also see the flow of that current in the circuit. Now, these bulbs are connected in series, but they have different brightness. Can you see that?
Yes.
Why do they have different brightness? It is because the 2 light bulbs have got different resistances. Now, if I show the value for the resistance for this bulb, it is 2 ohm there. Now, if I show the value of the resistance of the second bulb, it is 10 ohm. So you can clearly see that the light bulb that has got a greater resistance is the one that glows brighter, okay?
Yes.
But the one that has a smaller resistance glows dimmer. Now this is because of the differences in the power values. The power dissipated in each bulb. If you look at the formula for power, P is equals to I squared times R. Now since the bulbs are in series, they have the same current flowing through them. So it means we must consider the difference, which will be the resistance. So the bulb that has a larger resistance will dissipate more power, therefore it will glow brighter. So we can safely conclude that power is directly proportional to resistance. Do you see that now?
Yes.
Yes. Now, moving on to the auditory. The auditory has something to do with hearing.
Yes.
Now, usually learners who've got who uses auditory learning style, in class you find them sitting in the front, just like this group here. Can you turn the camera to this group? You find them sitting in the front of the classroom because they want to hear what I am saying.
Yes.
They also couple that with the visual, so they look at the lips so that they can interpret what I am saying as they are listening to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Now there has to be sound for them to be able to effectively learn. Now moving on to the kinesthetic learning style. With this one there has to be movement involved. These learners, they must be partaking in an experiment for them to be able to understand the concept. It must not just be them listening to what I'm saying. So rote teaching is not suitable for these learners. They must partake in the experiment. They must make observations as they are involved in the experiment. So I'm going to have 2 learners to come in and take part in the experiment for determination of the potential energy of an object from different heights, then we'll see how potential energy relates to the height. So if I can choose Ezra and Matebula, can you please come to the front? So involving learner in a study is one of the key factors that enhances the understanding of learners in the learning process. So Ezra, there you've got a scale where you are going to determine the mass of this block, and you've got a measuring tape. Measuring tape for you to measure the height. Now you are going to start by determining the mass of that block. You must switch on the scale. Then you determine the mass of the block. What is the mass of the block then?
4.7 kg.
That is 4.7 kilograms. So you can record that value on the board under the mass there. 4.7 kilograms. Now, from there you must put the block on the ground. When the block is on the ground, the height is
0.
The height is 0. So you must record 0 there. Then someone will help us with the calculation. Princess, can you do the calculation for the potential energy of the block when it is on the ground? The potential energy is 0, so record 0 there. Now, this is one of the key factors when you involve learners in the learning process. Now you can clearly see he has put the value together with the unit in the table there. And on the subheading, you have that quantity and the unit is already indicated. So we only put the values in the tables. The unit is on the subheading. Yes. So they can be able to correct themselves and they will never repeat that mistake in future. Now let us determine the potential energy of the block at a different height. Can you put the block on the chair and you measure the height of that block relative to the ground? So we are going to be using a measuring tape to measure the height. What is that height?
It's 50.
Yeah, so you can record 50 meters there. Is it in meters?
Yes, height in meters.
No, it is in centimeters. So you must convert that to meters. How do you convert from centimeters to meters?
Divide by 1,000, by 100.
You divide by 100. So someone with a calculator, can you divide that 50 by 100?
0.05.
Then that is
0.5.
no. Okay,
50.
you want to show the calculations then? 0.5
5.
meters. Now the mass of the block, it is still the same block, so it will have the same mass there. 4.7. Then Princess, can you help with the calculation of the potential energy? 2.35 there. 2.35. Now we are going to determine the last experiment where they must find the potential energy of the block at a certain height above the ground. Can you give me that? Experiment. Now, can you measure the height of that block from the ground? Can you put it closer to the table?
76.
That is 76. 76 divided by 100. Remember, we're converting centimeters to meters.
0.76.
0.76.
Same
Then
mass.
the mass is still the same block, 4.7. Then can you calculate the potential energy?
35,00.
That is 35. So that is 35.
Yes.
35 joules. Eh? Now I want you to make is
Including
it's what?
The second experiment said our energy in joules is 23.
You multiplied. Oh, you know what? You forgot to multiply by the gravitational acceleration value. Eh?
Times
So-
10.
Remember, we are substituting these values into that formula so that our output value of energy.
23,5.
It's about to be
Bona, don't repeat. Just change the comma.
It is 23,
5.
The second one,
Yeah,
I mean the third one, is it fine?
it's fine.
Did you multiply by 9.8?
Yes.
Okay. Now I wanted you to make an observation on the values of potential energy there and the values of height and come up with the relationship between potential energy and height. If you look at it here, height starts from 0, then 0.5 and 0.76, so the height is obviously increasing. Eh?
Yes.
Then what happens to the potential energy value?
Also increasing.
It increases. Eh? So what conclusion can you make about the relationship between potential energy and the height?
Directly proportional.
Directly proportional. Eh? So that means as the height is increasing, the potential energy also
Increase.
increases. Eh? Perfect. Now, coming to this experiment here. Here we are doing electrochemistry. So we are going to electroplate an ion nail with copper. So it is, the blue solution is a copper sulfate solution. Eh? And here you've got a copper rod. Now, we also have a 12-volt battery here. So I'm going to connect the terminal here. Just for you to see that there's a current flowing. You can see the electric sparks there. So now, when you immerse the electrodes inside the solution, you must make sure that the two electrodes do not touch. Otherwise, that is going to cause a short circuit. And that is going to affect the electroplating process. Eh? So now when we're electroplating, it means we are going to put a thin layer of one metal on the other. Okay? So after some time, the mass of the iron nail is going to increase. Eh? And we expect the mass of the copper rod to decrease. And this blue solution, it is the blue color is because of the copper two ions. So it's a electroplating process taking place. The copper ions in the solutions are going to be reduced on the ion nail, forming copper atoms, and the copper atoms will then stick on the ion nail. So after some time, when we remove that ion nail, its mass must have increased. So showing that it has been reduced. Okay? Because the reduction is actually an increase in mass. Okay? Yeah. So after some time, we're going to make an observation there. Now, as we wait for electroplating process to take place, we're going to look at the last learning style, olfactory. Now, with this one, information has to go to the brain through the nose. For instance, if teachers or tutors or lecturers are dealing with esters have got characteristic pleasant smell. Eh?
Yes.
So, for learners to remember how to identify esters, they have to be exposed to a fruity smell of a fruit. Eh? So here I've got a banana here. There is a certain ester that has a smell similar to that of a banana. Can you try and sniff them? It has a nice banana smell. Eh? So the component that is responsible for that nice smell is an ester. So an ester is actually a substance that is formed by a reaction between an alcohol and a carboxylic acid with the presence of an acid catalyst. Now that reaction is going to form an ester compound which has a characteristic pleasant smell, and water will be released as a byproduct. Eh? But not all esters have got a pleasant smell. Some have got bad odors like the smell of a nail polish remover. You know, a nail polish remover. The smell is not very pleasant. Eh? Yeah. Some they smell like
Tipex.
what is it called? The shoe glue, eh? The adhesive for the shoes. Yeah. So not all esters have got pleasant smell. Eh? But what is important is for learners to actually grasp the knowledge that esters have got characteristics smell. They must be exposed to the fruit, and they must taste the smell of a fruit. Okay, so that the knowledge can be retained in the brain. Okay. Now, one thing that is important when it comes to the classroom is for grouping learners in small groups so that they learn from each other, so the learners become resources for one another. Okay. Now, for learners that have got individual challenges, we support differentiation. If you look at those two learners, they are not in a group. So that means each learner has got a specific challenge. They have got their individual challenge. So the focus, when I come to them, it will be the focus on individual challenge, which is different from the challenge there. So that we call differentiation when it comes to teaching. I think that is all.
Okay.
Okay,